Richard, thank you so much for joining us today on the People in Housing podcast.
No problem.
It's great to have you here. Just as part of an introduction, do you want to just give us an overview of your role at Bournville and what you do there, and a bit of an overview as well of your journey in housing so far and how you've got to the position that you're in today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been at Bournville now for just over 2 years as head of Housing and Neighbourhoods.
Okay.
So I essentially have the income, lettings, housing management team and our money matters team, which is our financial inclusion team. That sits under myself within the wider communities directorate. My journey in housing started in 2005. Came into housing from the police service.
Okay.
So I was a police officer, done a lot of work with Bromford in particular around community work. And it was a time when antisocial behaviour orders were being broadened out for registered providers. So I took the step to work for Bromford for a while as a housing manager in Solihull, but with very much a focus on antisocial behaviour and community safety.
Okay.
And then moved on to Solihull Community Housing in a similar role, and then on to Waterloo, which is now Platform.
Yeah.
As an ASB coordinator, and that is when I was at Solihull. Actually, I did the what was then the foundation degree, the CIH foundation degree in housing. Right. So I was one of the last cohorts to actually take the official degree before it moved on to what is now the CIH kind of levels 1 to 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Qualifications, which they talk about now from the professionalism agenda. Then I moved into neighbourhood services manager, so broadened out my knowledge and skills just around housing management, give me more strings to my bow.
Yeah, of course.
And then I identified the only thing that was really missing was lettings, allocations and lettings, which is a big KPI driver within housing. So I took the step to move to home moves manager at PA Housing, and split my time between the Midlands and London. So saw a lot of different things. Obviously, London is a very, very different place.
Was you travelling there?
I was travelling there all through COVID as well. So it was a challenging period because obviously everything was restricted because of COVID.
Yes.
So I did my time there, got a really good understanding of how nominations agreements work, the pressures with local authorities, etc., working with housing. And then I'd spent time in big organisations like Platform, Bromford, and PA, they're all 30, 40, 50,000 properties.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really look at focusing on a more values-driven organisation, somewhere where I could really make a difference and really have an influence on the way things were done. So essentially, when the job came out at BVT, it really hit every point that I wanted. Extremely values-driven. With a strong legacy, lots of history behind it, clearly very customer focused, but with a desire to change and continue to change. So and that's why we are where we are today. We've had a lot of change in the last 2 years at BVT, and previously, even before I started, a lot of work's gone in since the new chief exec Pete Richmond came in, just around really focusing our corporate plan and really making sure that it's a customer-focused organisation, and that's really what attracted me, and I haven't been disappointed since I've been there. It's been great.
Great. And has your role always been the same there, or has it expanded since you've got in there and built it?
It's moved slightly. I've recently taken on our older person stock. So that's our 4 sheltered schemes in Birmingham and our extra care scheme in Telford. So that's something that I've taken on. But broadly, my main remit is around making sure that we're customer focused, making sure that we're working to our values, but making sure that we're performing well for the business. And I think we've done that. We are on a journey. It's a cliche to say, but we are. But I think everybody is, and I think with housing as a sector, we're always moving forward. And that's why people say we tend to go back to what we've always been doing, because it is a cycle. We edge forward with making incremental changes to processes and policies, and before you know it, you're back to where you were with the approach that you take. But we're at the start now of really driving through going from a more traditional housing management model to what we call our neighbourhood coordinator model. Which is essentially understanding our customers better, being more professionally curious, being inquisitive, getting behind the front door, and wanting to know about our customers, because we can't tailor our services to our customers if we don't know who they are and what they want.
Yeah.
And that's a big driver for us, is understanding our residents more. And yes, you know, you live and die by data, and data is really important. But there's nothing better than actually speaking to people with that personal touch, face to face. And that was a loss. That was, you know, understandably lost a little bit in COVID, where we were all working remotely. But I think now the customers' expectations are that we are out there, we are visible, we are engaging with them, and that's where we are, and that's what I want us to be. And we've done a lot of recruitment, and we've got some real disruptors in. Some
in a good way.
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to get in. Good. People who were really, you know, real customer advocates, but understood the business. And we very much recruited on attitudes and behaviours, not just qualifications.
A lot of doing that now as well. More than just a piece of paper. What can actually bring as a person?
Yeah, they've got to be part. They've got to be part of the team, and you've got to be understanding of what we're trying to do.
And how would you test that then at interview stage? Because we get asked that as well. But how would you guys? You're the ones who meet them face to face as well. Is there like something you put in, or is it just a judge of character?
I think it's a judge of character, and I think we're trialing quite a few different methods in terms of recruitment around sharing the questions beforehand to the candidates, so it's not a memory test. You know, it takes some of the apprehension out, some of the nervousness out, so people can be themselves a little bit more.
Of course. Okay. Has that worked?
It has been working, and I think it's something that I think it's very role specific, and it depends on what you are looking for. But I do think interviews, one of the things that I say when I'm interviewing is, you know, it is easy for me to say, but I want you to be as relaxed as possible.
Yeah, of course.
And I try and make it conversational. And you have to make sure that you retain that fairness for every candidate. But the broad drivers of it are that we want to bring out the best in you. We want to bring out your knowledge. We don't want you to just
freeze up
and say what you think we want us to say, because housing, as you know, it is a professional sector. It needs to be more professionalised. You know, the regulator has picked up on that, and the government have picked up on that. But there's some fantastic people, and we need to draw out those good qualities in people. And I think sometimes we have been guilty of just looking within the sector. And with the driver now for excellent customer service, and being customer led, there are other areas and other sectors which we can draw on that best practice. Not only the best practice, but there are transferable skills. And it also, when we look at qualifications and the driver for that, you know, if somebody's prepared and is committed and wants to, you know, learn, then those qualifications, whether it be level 3, level 4, level 5, at whatever level they're at, are a good starting point to give them that basis.
Brilliant. I know you touched on the qualifications there, but being at Bromford, Solihull, Platform, or formerly Waterloo, PA, and now Bournville, you've just seen everything. You've seen it all. You've gone through all the cycles. What would you say right now is the biggest challenge that you guys in particular, or the whole sector's facing?
I think quite rightly, and I've touched on it already, is customer expectation. We should be there to provide an excellent service to our residents. And I think in the past there has been a bit of a parent-child relationship with our residents. I'm not talking about BVT, I'm talking about as a sector. Where we're the landlord. This is the decision we've made. We're going to tell you what you can and can't do. And that's kind of just been, whether it's been agreed with or not, that's how it's been taken. Whereas now it's very much we're customer led, and we need to be customer led.
Of course.
And we need to understand that, and we need to listen. And I think BVT have definitely got that. It's very different with an organisation like BVT, which are a real community anchor, which are the centre of Bournville itself, and in Telford, where we've got our stock. You know, there are many elements of what we do, and we're seen as very much a de facto local authority as such, because we have responsibility for green spaces and the way the area looks, which would normally fall to the local authority. Because of the scheme of management and the way things are, you know, people look to us for that. But I think with other organisations, they may be developing, they may be a lot bigger, but they have much of a less of a community footprint.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have an estate in a town or a road in a village or something like that. So it's more difficult for them to have that kind of influence over the community. So I can see where the challenge is there when you've got 50,000 properties, but they're spread amongst 47 local authorities.
Yeah.
That is a challenge, and it's still a challenge for us. And we've got the majority of our stock or all of our stock in 2 local authorities or 3 local authorities.
Kind of links to when you said about going from a big organisation to Bournville, a bit smaller, more hands-on, a bit more of a community feel.
It's great because I have the ability to influence and change things, but so do my team, and that's one thing that we've really instilled in is empowering the team and giving them the, just the confidence and knowing that they've got that responsibility. And one thing it's a phrase I stole from what my director is. Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do within housing, it's doing nothing that will cause an issue. It's very rarely that you've done something that will cause an issue. It's ignoring something or turning a blind eye or not acting on information that you receive. That's what will then spiral out of control. So I always say to my teams, there isn't a blame culture. You won't be criticised. If something goes wrong, then as long as that decision or that choice was made in good faith and you can demonstrate why it was done at the time, carry on doing what you're doing, because they're the people on the ground. And I see my role and my manager's roles as facilitating that for the teams on the ground.
Of course.
They're the ones that are having that face-to-face customer contact, and we need to be supporting them to make sure that they feel that if they make that decision, that they'll be supported. And that they've got that permission's probably the wrong word, but they've certainly got that within their remit to be able to make changes. Whereas in sometimes in bigger organisations, it can be very top down. It can be very driven by
your number.
You are whereas our team are very close knit, very tight, work very closely together. Hybrid working is a challenge. People aren't in the office every day. People aren't sharing that best practice over the desk like they used to. Oh, I know that resident, or I dealt with them, or I've had that problem here, and it can that can be a little bit of a barrier sometimes.
So have you kind of brought everyone back in the office a bit more to kind of increase that, or
no? We're working. I mean, because of where we're located, because our head office is sort of right slap bang in the middle of our stock, or the majority of our stock within Birmingham. The neighbourhood coordinators will come in even if they're out and about.
Okay.
And there is the way I look at it is I want them out and about on the patch. I want them engaging with residents. I don't want them in the office just from an arbitrary point of view, just to be able to talk to each other. Really. They've got mobile phones, they've got ways of contacting each other. So it's having that mindset of knowing that you've got that team around you. We do have regular team meetings. We do have regular catch-ups, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, definitely.
But the fact is, we want the teams out and about. I want the teams engaging on site. I want them, if they've got notes to write up, I'd rather them write notes up as long as it's safe in a cafe or one of our community buildings, so they can engage with residents rather than having to come back to the office and write the notes and just engage with our own team. So. It's that visibility, and I think that's the best way of driving it. But I mean, speaking to other heads of service and other managers in the sector, hybrid working, some of it was forced on some organisations because of COVID. Some organisations had already embraced it years before that, and they were all set up for it, and that was just a slight tweak to some processes. But it will always remain, a different way of working.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes when we've got an open reception, for example, and so residents can come in and report problems, report issues. And I think historically they probably expected that there would be somebody there from the housing team to speak to them
straight away.
Which again is good customer service. But equally, we want them out and about on site. We can't have people sat in waiting just in case. So it's making sure that other colleagues within the business are, trained up, feel supported, feel confident in giving information back or taking information, and then that we get back to residents when we say we are going to go back to them, because that's really important. Keeping promises is something that is extremely important from a customer perspective.
Yeah, of course. And you've got the advantage when you've worked at a couple of organisations, you'll learn something from each one to take to the next one each time. So do you sometimes find yourself drawing on what you've learned in the past at other places and then implementing it where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's people at the end of the day. We're dealing with people and we're dealing with properties, and whether it's procedures, whether it's policies, whether it's ways of working, you do lean on where you've worked before,
of course,
in good and bad ways.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
There are things that inevitably that you disagree with, or that you find a little bit more challenging. But there are other things that you think that's something that that's a little nugget that I'm gonna keep for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
Whether it be a way that you're spoken to by a senior leader, or whether it's just a procedural thing that's given you really good results. I think that's something inevitably you're going to lean on. Because housing's a very close-knit sector, and it's there's a lot of movement within the sector. There always will be.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's something that we do quite well. We don't hold best practice. As we're not seen as competitors for each other.
Yeah, of course.
We're all in the same business, and we should all be there for our residents
to share and help. And that's why we do stuff like this. And there's all the events that happen throughout the year. You can all meet together as well. So all stuff like that, collaboration and just each other, really.
It's working that partnership working. It's one of our values, and that it's really, really important working in partnership. Whether it's your statutory agencies like your local authorities, your police, etc., and social services, or whether it's the partners internally, or whether it's other providers, because we all have very similar challenges. They're all on a different scale depending on your size and depending on maybe where you're geographically based, but they are all very similar challenges, and I think it is really important that we share best practice. The Birmingham Social Housing Partnership's a case in point with that. That's a very well attended group, very well chaired, very well run, and it's a great sounding board, certainly for the teams. And I've asked for policies to be reviewed through that group, to get a critical eye from, how are you doing it? What are the challenges you've got? So to have that kind of forum, in a city like this, I think is really, really valuable.
Yeah, perfect. And one of the challenges we touched on earlier was one of the big regulatory changes at the moment is the new housing qualification. So how are you guys tackling that? And have you got like a roadmap? Because I think it's 2 years. It's got to be settled in the next 12 months. How has that changed you guys, and how are you going across that at the moment?
Well, I've got my 2 service managers are going through the level 5 now, CIH level 5 now, because whilst it's not a requirement as yet, I think it's really important that not only does it show an investment in the team, it gets us ready. And we are looking at, through our PPDs, which is kind of our annual performance kind of look back and look forward, which colleagues are keen to go through that.
So you've put it out there and asked them as well then, who would want to be put through this? Because you guys have to pay, don't you?
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
So what if everyone steps forward?
It would be based, I think it would be based on job role. Whether it's needed. It will be based on, we need to look at succession planning. I think, again, in housing, sometimes something that is lacking is succession planning. We do look at there's not a lot of that reflective practice, not a lot, because it's very, very onto the next thing. And I think that's one thing that I've tried to do at BVT is look at our succession planning, look at who are the rising stars, and make sure that we're supporting everybody, but that we're also making sure that those people that have identified that they want to progress, or that they want to skill up in various different areas, if we can afford it, and if it's relevant to their job role, that's how you get engaged teams, that's how you get engaged staff that want to remain with you and grow with you. But it's also about just getting that culture, and like I say, I oversee 3 or 4 different teams, some in different locations, and it's really important that whilst they're teams within themselves, that they all feel part of one bigger team as well,
Yes.
and then that they all feel part of BVT as well.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm really trying to drive through with the managers, and I think we're, as a business, we're doing a really good job at that.
Yeah,
We've got a very clear corporate plan, we've got very clear goals, very clear values, and that's translating well into what we're doing on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. And where's the budget come from then? Because these courses, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
They're a few £1,000s.
Yeah.
Depending on which level that you do.
Yeah.
Have you had to pull that from somewhere else, or have you got funding?
We have a learning and development budget.
Okay.
Which sits under our HR team.
Okay.
And they have obviously identified that this is a driver moving forward. And that this is going to be a requirement for us. So they've been great in, serving up that money where we've needed it.
Okay.
Obviously, it does take up a big chunk. It is there were some of those smaller, maybe, day courses or online courses or whatever. They may have fallen by the wayside because of this.
Yeah.
But I think this is something that we need. It's something that provides the managers with that reassurance that we're invested in them.
Okay.
And that we want this as professional team as possible. I think it's something just as a sector. Whilst I'm not 100% sure that they know the nuance of it yet, and it's very much a headline. We want to get everybody qualified.
Yeah.
I think it's what happens if you've been in housing for 25 years and you don't want to get qualified, and you're a manager. I think there are various nuances that need ironing out, but housing needs to be seen as a professional industry.
Yes, of course.
Because it is, we often know more about, we often, I've been in what are so-called professionals meetings with police, social services, mental health services, child protection officers, those kind of things. And I've been asked to leave the room as so the professionals can discuss the matter.
Okay.
And you very much think to yourself, well, I probably know more than you about this individual's life, because I'm not seen as a statutory body. I'm their landlord, so I'm allowed into their property. I've had conversations with them, but unfortunately, we're not seen as a professional like a social worker is, like a police officer is, and I think very much we are. And whilst we don't need a qualification for that, I think it certainly helps. Yeah. And I think it will add a little bit of kudos to what the teams do, because, as I say, there are some magnificent people out there working in housing, and I knew within several weeks of coming into housing that it was for me. And the actual impacts you can have on individuals and families' lives by doing very little really for yourself, but huge, that can make a huge amount for a family. It's
a big driver across the industry. Whenever I ask people what got you into it, it's that giving back part and helping others, where it's trying to relay that to the younger generation and get more people into it now who just want to do. They don't really see it as like the thing to do.
It's hard because housing is front and center. On everything you see on the news. At the moment, it is all about, there is a housing crisis.
Yes.
And there has been a housing crisis for the best part of 15, 20 years, if not longer. Yeah. And I think it's visible, and it's been visible even more so with the tragedies at Grenfell, with our Bishak, all the the things that have been real challenges for the sector, but it does put it front and center. And I think that the rewards of working in housing are huge. The flexibility, the ability to work, to have that influence, and the ability to change somebody's life or change a family's life, you wouldn't have. I didn't have in the police that ability. Okay. Because it's a very cut down process. Whereas in housing, you can be with somebody from the beginning to the end.
See it all the way through,
support them all the way through. Yeah. And I think that's extremely rewarding. It is challenging at times, and it is frustrating, like any role is. Yeah. And you are at the mercy of societal challenges and things that might go wrong, and we've gone through COVID, we've gone through the cost of living crisis. That's been had a direct impact on our residents, and not only on our residents but on the team as well. It's challenging if you're an income officer and you've got your finances are stretched at home and you're coming in every day asking other people for money, and they're under pressure, and so it can be, from a resilience perspective, it can be really hard. But certainly at BVT, we're trying to counteract that with lots of really positive wellbeing stuff. I'm going on resilience training on Thursday, and that's something that the whole business, including our exec team, have
Did you ask for that, or did they put you forward?
I think it was something based off the back of our employee surveys and things like that. Okay. So we do ask the questions.
It's good to see they've actually actioned it as well.
Yeah, and there's and the wellbeing side and the questions that are asked of our colleagues they are all actioned. We'll go through them. They're broken down team by team, and if there are specific things that need addressing. And resilience is one, because it has been a tough few years for people. And work and home life has really taken its toll on a lot of people, and I think it's important that we recognise that, and BVT have certainly recognised that in various with the softer things, but also then the training as well with coping mechanisms and coping strategies. So
that's really good.
I'm looking forward to that on Thursday.
Brilliant. And like you just mentioned, there's always something in the industry that's happening that's causing complete chaos. So you never know what's going to happen, and then the budget just gets blown apart. You've got to focus on something else. So when it's changing every single year, how are you? Does it affect you? Okay, if there's cuts, and if there are, how are you still meeting the basic needs of your tenants to make sure you can still deliver their core needs?
I mean, there has for since COVID, it has been the cost of living crisis. Fuel poverty, all those kind of things. We obviously spikes in inflation. Which has massively increased costs. And whilst rents have increased, 7% or a lot of money for our residents, that still doesn't cover our costs, which are as a sector, which are increasing.
And you've got to find that
double figures. You've got to find that gap. The way we looked at it, we're still investing millions of pounds in our stock. We're trying to improve the quality of our stock in terms of our kitchens, bathrooms, window program. We've got a lot of money certainly in, and that takes time and that takes money. And when we're looking to improve the quality of our properties in the conservation area, for example, which is the traditional Bournville side, it all takes. It's not like you can just stick a set of UPVC windows in that you've bought from en masse.
Simple.
They all need a bespoke design. They all need to be done. There's a conservation officer that needs to be satisfied with their design. They need to be in keeping. They need to be timber. All those kind of things. So. That is a real investment, but ultimately it will have a huge impact on people's lives in terms of, at the winter, when instead of having that draft coming through, they can, they've got warmer, safer, homes that are more energy efficient, that should cost them less in terms of heating, and that money is then back in their pocket. So that's the way we're looking at it. We've had specific programs like the Well Winter program, where we've tried to focus on fuel and food vouchers for the families most in need. That's been over 3 years now, and it's been tailored year on year.
Because I was going to ask, what's something that you're really proud of, that you want to shout about? So where did that come from? What brought that up in the first place?
It was something that we picked up on through our money advice team, and the amount of families that were you see it nationally around accessing food banks and being in fuel poverty. We did quite a bit of work with Severn Trent around water poverty and things like that, and being able to access grants. So that was a great bit of partnership working that we did. But just the data and the people that were contacting us, it was showing a spike in people who were really struggling. And we've done an excellent job in keeping our rent collection high. Our arrears level is really, really positive. We, for 12 months, we didn't evict anybody, any resident.
Okay.
We worked with all of our residents.
Is that good compared to the rest of the sector?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was a real eviction's always the last resort.
Yeah.
You know, we want to help people sustain tenancies, but I think for around 18 months we didn't evict anybody. We worked with everybody, and at the same time reducing our arrears significantly. So that was a real positive. But also the second layer of that is the work that we did in the Well Winter Fund around supporting people in fuel poverty, supporting people with food at the time of the year where it is needed the most.
Yeah.
You know, where it's Christmas, the weather's poor, finances are stretched, and we set aside a significant amount of money to support residents, and that was really, really helpful. And we've, as the years have gone on, we've tailored that to make sure it goes to those that are most in need.
Okay.
And you know, it's something that the team are really proud of, that I'm really proud of. And whilst it takes quite a lot of time to administer, to make sure that it's fair, to make sure that the people who do need it are getting it.
Yeah.
But it is really worthwhile, and it's a good opportunity for working with other teams, because we work very closely with our customer service centre around issuing that money out to the residents and making sure that, you know, it is getting to them. That's something that I'm really, really proud of. Also, the other project that I'm proud of at the moment is we're converting the beaches, which is the beaches, okay. Which is
not an actual beach.
No, it is a beaches and I think trees beaches.
Right, makes more sense.
And it was historically it was like a holiday camp for inner city children that was set up by the Cadbury family for, you know, children that lived in poverty that weren't able to have a holiday. That they would come out to Bournville and they'd have outdoor activities and things like that. And then over the last couple of decades, it's took various guises, conference centre, things like that. But it's got accommodation, and it's, you know, slap bang in the centre of Bournville. And now we're working with Spring Housing. Okay. Yeah. To provide sort of short to medium accommodation for families that are facing homelessness. And that's repurposing that building to really help, I think, over 20 families that are either currently in temporary accommodation or facing homelessness. And that's something that, you know, that could have just been rented out as a commercial building. Yeah. But we've worked with Spring, who is one of our partners anyway. We work with Spring anyway. And, you know, we're hoping that over time that will help, you know, numerous families get back onto a more sustainable footing. Yeah. And we're going to be working really closely with them. Do you think more of the sector should
do that, when they partner with a charity and do more of them sort of schemes?
I think it's really valuable. You know, I think there are so many people out there who need help. You know, whether it's refugees, whether it's people fleeing domestic abuse, whether it's young care leavers. You know, we've got our care leavers scheme at the Holdings, which has seen, you know, some really positive stories around, you know, young people leaving care and then going into more sustainable long-term accommodation, and the work that's done with the team. You know, I think where you can as a business, you know, I think it's really important. You know, we are born out of over 120 years of, you know, supporting people and trying to help people where we can. And that's, you know, one of the huge drivers, you know, and one of the really important parts of BVT. And I don't see that changing. Yeah. You know, it's one of our, it's inbuilt within our values. It is who we are. Yeah. And whilst we're not currently developing and growing, we are trying to make our stock as, you know, energy efficient and as fit for purpose for the future as possible, and also doing everything we can to engage with our residents and listen to them as to how we deliver our services and what we do. And I think that's, you know, that's a real driver for me.
Yeah, perfect. So where do you see the sector going if you had a crystal ball, 5, 10, 20 years time? Where do you think, like, Bournville and the whole sector together, where's it going?
I think the sector as a whole will remain front and centre. Yeah. Because the housing crisis isn't going away, won't go away overnight. You can't build properties overnight.
Yeah.
You know, it'll take sustained building over a period of time. So it's not going to be solved overnight. I think the impact of regulation is really important. I think it's something that obviously hasn't been in place for, you know, several years.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be really helpful to us as a sector to understand, you know, what's needed and to be driven by that. And I think that, you know, whether we live or die by it, I don't know, but I think we certainly need to make sure that, you know, we are working to give the best service that we possibly can. And in terms of BVT, I think hopefully go from strength to strength. Hopefully, you know, we retain the people that, you know, have come in, and we build on that. We build on our culture. We build on our values, and I think we've got a really good corporate plan for the next 10 years. You know, which is about sustaining our properties, but you know, but there is a plan in the future. To do great things, and you know, I'm really energized, and it's, you know, I've said to
have that passion and that
absolutely, yeah. I've been, like I say, I've been in the sector for 20 years now, and seen, you know, really good things and some not so good things. And I've been at BVT for just over 2 years, and I love coming to work every day. You know, it's challenging. You know, we do have, you know, like anybody in the sector, we've got significant challenges at the moment.
Of course.
But we're facing them up, and we're doing everything that we can to try and meet those challenges. And we've got really, you know, we've got really good people. And I think that's one of the drivers behind anything. If you can get really good people who care, who buy into the values of the organisation,
that's the biggest thing.
You're on the way to big things there.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really, you know, really positive about the future.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully we can continue to share with other organisations. I think that's a real driver. You know, we're all under the same pressures now. We're all, you know, and I really, that's something that I'm passionate about, and I'm passionate about getting, you know, one of the reasons I'm here today is getting BVTs, the good work that BVT are doing out there.
Yeah, of course.
But also recognising that we're not a standalone in that, that the sector needs, you know, a bit of a, you know, some positive feedback as well at times, because you know,
you're doing good work.
There's a lot of people that go out there every single day and work extremely hard and work with residents, and you know, it isn't getting any easier for them. And I think some of the, whether it's the press that you hear or whatever, you know, we need to make sure that those people on the ground are getting that recognition that they're doing a great job. Yeah. You know, and that as a sector we support them.
And like you said, it's all about getting the right people in and encouraging more people to join the sector as well. So if you was to speak to a graduate or a kid in college or someone who's thinking about it, what would you say to entice them and encourage them to get into the sector? I know you said a few things earlier, but is there anything else you kind of add on what you guys are doing to get more people through the door?
I just say it's a really exciting sector to work in. That you have the ability to go in various different directions. That broadly as organisations that we are there to support you, whether you want to work in assets, whether you want to work in maintenance, whether you want to work in housing management, that those different varied roles are there. And there's a lot of transferable skills within the sector as well that you can move within the sector. No one day is ever the same, you know, and it certainly couldn't be classed as boring, you know. And the rewards are there, and if you work hard, and you know the framework is there for qualifications and professionalism now. And if that is something that you want to follow, then and you get the right organisation, that you can gain as much experience and as much knowledge as you possibly can. And you've got the ability, like I say, you've got the ability to change people's lives. You know, and I say that to the team. We're not going to solve everything. We're never going to be able to solve everybody's problems. But you know, I want the interactions that they have with the team to just have that little bit of positivity, that they come away from those, that people's lives are just that little bit better by having an interaction with us and with BVT. and you can, that can be at varying levels. You can find a property for somebody who's been overcrowded, that a property comes up and that you can match them, or you can find a mutual exchange through your local knowledge of somebody who maybe is under occupying and somebody who's overcrowded.
Yeah.
You can match them up, and you know, they could be financially struggling because they're under occupied and they're paying more rent than they can afford.
Yeah.
And they're having to their children are suffering at school because they're having to share a bedroom between three of them. And in you understanding their circumstances and matching them up, you can change those two families' lives forever.
Like you said, from the beginning to the end, see it all the way through.
And you see it all the way through, and then you'll be there after that, and you'll be there, and then they'll be buying then with that customer because you supported them, and then when you want to work with them on other things and engage them on other things, then there's that relationship there.
Of course, yeah.
And I think, you know, that can't be underestimated, the impact that you can have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would. A lot of people that I speak to, they fall into the sector, but they very rarely fall out of the sector.
Okay.
It's not something, housing isn't something that they've chosen to do.
Yeah, because people, you don't grow up aspiring to be
a
head of housing, because when I was at school, I'd never really, it's something that you learn or come across. So
it's not one of the staple jobs.
Yeah, of course.
But there are, like I say, there are so many transferable skills and a lot of jobs that can bring you into the sector. And, you know, I would advocate coming into housing. You know, again, it's full of great people.
Yeah.
You know, people who really want to make a difference, who are really positive. You know, it's fun. You know, you can have some real good fun with people. You know, but like I say, ultimately, finish the day in a better place than when you started the day because you've helped people out.
Yeah.
You know, not every day is like that.
Of course.
You know, but there are many days that are like that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think there's a lot of places where, or a lot of sectors where you can say that.
And get that back.
Yeah.
But I think that's an absolute perfect position to end on.
No problem.
I would say thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts. I've certainly learned a thing or two, and hopefully people watching have as well, that they can learn and implement as well.
Brilliant.
So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.